Hey y'all, welcome back to Live in the Wellness Garden. I am your site manager here, Andreas, and we are going to be talking about how to make liquid fertilizer for free today. A really fun topic because we really don't use any store-bought fertilizers here in the Wellness Garden. It's just not a thing that we rely on. And there's a really easy way to make your own liquid fertilizer, and I'm going to show you how today. So first, before we do that, let's give a quick update on the garden. Check it out. Everything is recovering from the heat now that we have much cooler temperatures. The walking stick kale looks absolutely beautiful. I definitely want to make this a walking stick kale bed. It's kind of like more collard greens, I'd say, but it is definitely a perennial. You can see the nice woody stalks right there. I think we could probably take cuttings and root them in the bed itself. Probably just like cut off sections of stem and just stick them in the soil. We'll try that, see how that goes. And they'll probably shoot from the base too once we cut them from the ground. You can see those dormant buds right there. Awesome plant. I want to grow more of it. Yields lots and lots of beautiful greens. Mexican sunflower is resprouting after we cut it last week or the other week. Our pigeon peas have flowers. Really exciting. I think we're going to let this one go to flower and collect some seed. Asparagus looking good. We planted this year. So this is a strawberry, onions, and asparagus bed. And in some of these beds we have more pigeon peas as well. We want to produce as much of this beautiful green manure as we possibly can to feed our soil. And in the wellness garden here, this is the main source of nutrients that we use to brew liquid fertilizer. Because pigeon pea is a good example. It is a nitrogen fixer. It is capable of accessing nitrogen directly from the atmosphere with the help of these little symbiotic bacteria that live on these structures that the plant builds for these bacteria on the roots. So we grow a lot of this. We grow a lot of the Mexican sunflower, which is also really good at pulling nutrients out of the soil that are inaccessible to other plants. And we use this to kind of like concentrate and bring nutrients in from the surrounding environment, right? So in doing this, we are able to produce lots and lots of this rich leafy green material, right? And there are two ways we use this material. So firstly, we apply it directly to the soil as a mulch. If it's really nice green stuff, we'll usually bury it under something less green, sort of think composting, greens and browns. So we have our Mexican sunflower under here, protected from the sun, and then the sorghum Sudan grass on top. It's breaking down now, and that acts as a slow release fertilizer, right? And the other way is we take any excess we have and we make it into liquid fertilizer using the method I'll be talking about today. But before we do that, I want to give an update on the soil blocks. Check it out. 1 week old seedlings. These are only 1 week old. I cannot believe it. They have grown so much. I've never seen chard germinate this fast. I've never seen lettuce germinate this fast. And I've never seen onions germinate this fast. This is after a week. Incredible. I'm blown away by the success of these soil blocks. And we did use a coconut coir and vermiculite for this recipe that we used. But I eventually want to start making soil blocks out of 100% leaf mold, which we are making in this bin right here. And leaf mold is just leaf compost. And it is pretty much like pixie dust. It's one of the most amazing materials you can make. And it is one of the ingredients that we'll be using in our liquid fertilizer. So I'll show you what it looks like. Let me grab a little sample under here of a completed leaf mold. It takes about a year to make, but this is some of the best compost you can possibly use. It is so rich in beneficial microorganisms, and we effectively use it as a starter to make our liquid fertilizer. So let's talk about our liquid fertilizer, okay? So here it is. We make it in this bucket right here. So this is what I like to call the stank bucket because it is a little bit smelly. But, it's not like... If you're an organic gardener, then it's not a big deal. You know what fish emulsion smells like, you'll be able to handle this. This basically just smells like a petting zoo. So we open this up, it's a sealed bucket, and we just literally drop foliage in. Whatever we can find. Recently, a large branch fell off of one of these trees over here. These gigantic trees. They're called Tipuana trees. It is a tree that is native to Brazil, and like pigeon pea, like beans, like peas, it is a legume. And so the trees are really, really rich in nitrogen and many other nutrients. So I'm like, to the grounds people who were about to clean up. I'm like, hey, can I have that? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I took the branch, I chopped the branch up, I removed the leaves, separated the leaves, of course, because it's the leafy part that I'm after, which is where all the nutrients are, at least the ones that we're interested in for this preparation. Chopped them up real good and stuffed them into this bucket. And this bucket has been going for about, it's on its 9th month right now. So this is a 9-month-old bucket, right? And so basically, here's how we start one of these buckets, right? And this is called Jadam liquid fertilizer. And so here's what we do. So we fill the bucket up with plant material, we toss in a handful of leaf mold, we top it up with dechlorinated water, seal the bucket, and then let it break down. Just let it digest for at least 10 days when you're working with plant material, right? And then what you can do is you can strain off the product and use it as a liquid feed. Simple as that. You typically dilute it 1:30, and that is how you make liquid fertilizer. I can end the live stream right here, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to show you guys how I feed it, because when you start one of these buckets, you want to keep it going, right? When you take out liquid fertilizer from it, you want to add some more plant material back in, and then add some more water. And if it starts to smell a way you don't want it to smell, or a way that's not good, then you want to add more leaf mold to get some more good biology in there. Because these are the components, right? We have our leafy material. So leafy material right there. That is our source of nutrients. We have the leaf mold I just showed you guys. That is our source of beneficial microorganisms to digest this material and release the nutrients from it. Then we have our water, which is a carrier solution. And you can see we end up with this greenish colored liquid, right? Over time. And slowly but surely, all of the nutrients in the foliage that you added will get released into the water, and then you will have them in a liquid form to apply to your plants, right? But that's not all. You don't have to use plant material to make fertilizer this way. You could use basically anything that came from a living thing. You know, you could use food scraps. This is a different way to deal with your food scraps, especially the stuff that you can't put in a compost bin. So like meat, dairy, fish, you know, even junk food, chocolate cake, what have you, toss it in the bucket, you know, toss in a handful of leaf mold, fill it up with water, let it break down. If you're using food waste, at least 3 months. If you're using plant material, at least 10 days, ideally 2 weeks. So food waste, you could use food waste to produce this. You can use expired produce, you can use the produce that is not good and that you don't want to eat from the crops that you grew. Anything that is like nice and rich in nutrients, right? So green plant material, food waste, and also, guess what? Urine and feces. This is a great way to deal with your own human waste and convert it into fertilizer. And if you're doing it that way, then make sure you allow for it to digest for at least 6 months. Obviously, we don't do that here in the wellness garden. We just use plant material. That would be kind of like, you know, I feel like that would be an issue here to do that, you know, given that we're, you know, outdoors on a university campus. But just for your information, you can use your own human waste to do this too. And one thing that I have broken down using this method at home was dead fish from my aquaponics system. You're going to want to give that about 6 months as well. And generally, the richer material you use, you know, on a spectrum from plant material all the way to, you know, like fish carcasses and human waste, the more time it's going to take and the smellier it's going to be. But, you know, this stuff isn't that bad. We use it on a regular basis, and it just kind of smells like... Right now it smells... it has a bit of a strong odor from all of the nutrients being liberated. Some of these are going into a gaseous form. But when it's, you know, mature and well-aged, it smells like a petting zoo, and it's not that bad. In my opinion, fish emulsion smells worse than that. And everybody uses fish emulsion who, you know, does organic gardening, or a lot of people do. So, yep, that's how you make it. And I'll show you guys some of the plants that we use to feed it. All right, so I'm going to close that back up for now. And this sort of leads us into a conversation about green manure. And we've talked about green manure in the past. So green manure plants are plants that you grow for fertilizer specifically. You know, you don't really grow them to eat, you know, although some of these plants may have edible portions, but the main purpose of these plants is to use them as fertilizer, to feed your other plants and to enrich the soil, right? So Couple examples of these plants we have in the wellness garden. So once again, pigeon peas. This is one of my favorite ones. It is a perennial legume, so that means it is a nitrogen-fixing plant that has a lifespan greater than a year. A pigeon pea plant will typically live for about 5 years. This one is on its 3rd year. We prune it pretty heavily. It can get quite a bit larger if you're to let it grow, but we cut these back and harvest them a lot. And the rest of these right here are on their 1st year. These ones are a bit younger, but this one we were able to get established earlier in the season. We were having issues with roly-polies eating the seedlings, so we had to try multiple times to establish these new ones, but they're getting going, and they'll probably be like that size by next year. So pigeon pea is an awesome one to use. Another one that we like to use, once again, is the Mexican sunflower, the Tithonia Diversifolia. We plant these all around the garden, and they are not legumes. Actually, as the name says, it is a relative of the sunflower. These can grow into giant bushes that produce beautiful, solid yellow sunflowers all over them. We haven't gotten any sunflowers yet from these plants, but maybe this year. You can use them as cut flowers. This is also a medicinal plant in many indigenous cultures. But it's also a fantastic green manure. Sort of like how sunflowers are too. Sunflowers are a great green manure. And we'll get those volunteering all over the garden as well. But this one is even better. Pound for pound by dry weight, this is basically like chicken manure. It's especially high in nitrogen and potassium. So really, really great thing to fertilize leafy greens with especially. And it grows super fast. All these plants grow super fast. Mexican sunflower can easily grow a foot per week. Same thing with pigeon pea. And then this one is particularly easy to propagate too. We just use stem cuttings. I'll show you guys how we propagate it. So if we come over here, you can have a look at our Mexican sunflower cuttings. We're just rooting them in this fabric pot right here. Stem sections about 10 to 14 inches long. Bury them until at least 2 nodes are showing. You can see node, and then just keep them moist and wait, and they'll root eventually, and then you can transplant them wherever you want them. I find it's even better if you're going to take the cuttings and stick them directly in the ground where they're going to be forever. And Mexican sunflower is also perennial. I'm not sure how long they typically live for, longer than pigeon pea, but they'll last you a long time, and every year, up to a certain point, they'll yield more and more green manure for you, more and more of this wonderful plant-based fertilizer. Another one, Comfrey. This one we put in the understory of our fruit trees. So Comfrey, like Mexican sunflower, is great at accumulating nitrogen and potassium and also some trace minerals. And it is not a legume. It is actually in the borage family. But this one is great if you kind of want to like tuck it in around like the understory of larger plants. Because in our climate, it really prefers more of a part shade situation. It's not as heat tolerant of the others. Mexican sunflower and especially pigeon pea absolutely love heat. Comfrey isn't exactly as partial to heat. It more likes warm weather. So in the summer, it's really happy under our fruit trees. Otherwise, it does like sun. So Comfrey, this one we're experimenting with. This is a native. This is called false indigo. And you can also use Moringa as green manure if you have too much of it. We harvest all of this stuff. We take a small portion for the folks who work at the garden and the Magrum Center, and most of it goes to the CSUN Food Pantry. Moringa is probably the fastest growing plant in our garden, alongside Mexican sunflower. These stems that you see right here are about 3.5 months old, and they're already approaching like 6 feet tall. So they grow really fast. They're a great food plant as well. We've talked a lot about Moringa in our past live streams. Check those out. Check out the recordings on our Instagram. But yeah, so these are some of the plants that we will use to feed our bucket. So I think it's time for us to demonstrate how we go about doing that. So I'm going to go into the shed and get the required tools. While I do that, I'm going to leave you guys with a very nice view of our banana plant that we planted back in March from a cutting or a pup that was about 1 foot tall. You can see it now, how much it's grown. So that's our banana. I'm gonna go grab some tools and I'll show you guys my preferred tools of the trade for harvesting green manure and processing it. So there we go. Beautiful, beautiful blue Java banana. And this one is going to produce its first bunch of bananas probably next year. It's growing so rapidly. We only actually fertilize it with imported fertilizers once, and this is really the only thing that we use imported fertilizers on since it's just so demanding, and we're still ramping up our green manure production. And yeah, I should mention that another one we're going to be starting to use this year, we're going to plant it all along the front here, is alfalfa. Alfalfa uses a lot less water than the other ones, and it is a nitrogen fixer like pigeon pea, so that's why it's desirable. We grow a couple annuals that we can use as green manure too. So for example, black-eyed peas make a good green manure, beans make a good green manure, peas make a good green manure. Like a lot of these plants that are nitrogen fixers you can use for that purpose as well. Sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes as well. These ones we just chopped and dropped. We're going to be talking about chop and drop in the future in more detail. But that's basically just, again, mulching with the green manure and covering it up with a browner material. But yeah, so let's talk about how to harvest these plants. I think we'll do a full cut on the Comfrey today. So I'm going to grab my handy dandy totes. So tote right here for harvesting green manure, right? And then two tools I like. So just your standard bypass pruners, and then a rice knife. I really like the rice knives. We also have a larger sickle that we use for harvesting the larger stuff like Mexican sunflower. But we'll start with these. So I think we're going to do the Comfrey today. So I'll show you guys how to do it. Very easy. And don't be afraid when it comes to harvesting green manure. These plants are really tough and they can take a lot of pruning. So just grab it like so, and then give it a good chop. That's it. So then what you can do, once you have your material, I'm going to pour out this extra stuff around the fruit trees, is you can then very carefully bundle it up and chop it like so. Just give it a rough chop. You want a rough chop. Thank you, Nellie. Nellie's manning the camera. All right. So we're gonna add as much as we can to the bucket. That has bird poop on it. Let's take that one out. If it has bird poop on it, use it as a chop and drop. Don't put it in your JLF. Because that's what this fertilizer is called. It's called JLF. We're gonna be talking about the book where this comes from after we do the demonstration, because I really want to recommend this book to you guys. So people oftentimes believe, there's this really funny joke that I keep seeing, that people who are gardeners spend $40 to grow one tomato, or like $100 or however much to grow one tomato. And it's a testament to the fact that, yeah, gardening can be an investment. But if you're smart about it, it's not really much of an investment at all in anything except time and knowledge, right? Because the only thing that you have to buy to make this fertilizer is the bucket. So, other than that, this is totally free. You can harvest wild plants for this too. Invasive species are a huge problem here. I've harvested invasive grasses and made them into this kind of fertilizer, and it works really well. So if you're having issues with invasive plants around your area, and you know how to deal with them responsibly and remove them responsibly, make them into liquid fertilizer. It's a great way to deal with them. That's one thing I especially advocate for, because things like wild mustard and oats are a huge problem around here. Just make sure you're not collecting from a site with contaminated soil. And also make sure that you're not collecting from sensitive habitat. Look for places where there's pretty much invasive plants as far as the eye can see, and collect from there. So yeah, great way to deal with invasive plants too is to make them into fertilizer using this method. Yeah, I think we'll just do the Comfrey today. I don't want to really mess with the pigeon pea yet. Yeah. Or maybe a little bit. I'll just demonstrate how to harvest from the pigeon pea. Okay. Yeah, Comfrey's really easy. That one I'm not going to take. It's still recovering. I should probably get that one first. And for the next cut, we're going to feed it all to the fruit trees. Comfrey is also very easy to propagate. You just take root divisions about as long as your finger, or maybe half as long if they're nice and thick, or crown divisions. Just stick them in the soil and keep it moist. So we are developing this area into a bona fide food forest. You can see that not only are we growing these fruit trees here, but these green manure plants such as comfrey, and also some other food plants such as strawberries and chives and a Peruvian goldenberry. So we're really trying to make use of this space. Go. Yeah, rice knives are awesome. Just make sure you're careful with it. You don't want to chop off your finger. Chop and drop the plants, not your finger. All right, there we go. Pretty good yield. And so now this is going to feed the whole garden. Any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. So let's talk about the pigeon pea then. So I just want to focus on thinning the pigeon pea out because we have like a lot of these new shoots. And maybe doing some cuts in places where we can encourage more branching and more growth to increase our green manure yield. So if we think about it that way, if it's getting too dense in some areas, we can remove some of this interior growth right here, just like so. And if we're looking to increase our green manure production, we'll find the thickest stems and see where they're starting to like shoot out new buds, and then give them just a little cut right there. And pigeon pea, once again, is a nitrogen fixer. And then yeah, for this one, you could take the rice knife or just this and just give it a chop. A rough chop is totally fine. It just helps it break down a bit faster. You can also tear it, although pigeon peas stems are kind of tough. It's hard to tear them. Comfrey is like really, really tender. But yeah, so we'll take some of this material in here. Probably go for the thicker stuff and the stuff that's really getting crowded in there right now. This one is starting to shoot, but that's the secondary shoot. This one is not ready. Again, I really just want to demonstrate how to work with the pigeon pea in this capacity. This one is kind of crossing a bit, so we can probably take that one all the way down. Or maybe I'll take it down to like a couple nodes. There we are. Free nitrogen. You do not have to buy Miracle Grow. You do not even have to buy organic fertilizers. You can just use this stuff as your main source of fertility. The one thing we actually need more of right now is phosphorus, and there's another way we're going to look into getting that we might talk about in future live, because this doesn't really provide much phosphorus. But other than that, plants are a very balanced source of nutrients, because what nutrients can you find in plants? The nutrients needed to grow plants. So, and these ones, we can probably encourage them to branch, like these are young ones, so if we want to encourage them to branch, we'll just pinch them off like so. Just pinch them off. And this one, and also you want to prune them if they're starting to shoot out flowers. This one looks like it. I can't tell if these are new shoots or flowers yet, but if this is shooting out flowers, then you'll want to give it a bit of a cut.
They kind of do look like flowers.
They kind of do. Sometimes it's pigeon pea. It's hard to tell.
Okay.
But we're not going to need to use all this stuff. Yeah, see, this one is already starting to branch, so we'll cut it below where it's starting to branch like that. And then, yeah, more material. So let's see. Yeah, see, it's not. You see, it's not. These are new shoots. So it's hard to tell sometimes in pigeon pea. This one is kind of like growing in the shade, and like ones that are growing in the shade, you can take off too because they're not really serving the plant much. Yeah, so that's how we use pigeon pea in this capacity. Just a rough chop.
Oh, hi, Frida.
How's it going, Frida?
I just saw your comment.
What did Frida say?
She just said hi.
Oh. So we'll open up our stank bucket. I'll give this a good mix first, and the rest of this we can use to feed our other plants if we have too much of it. Because I packed in those teepee leaves pretty tight the other day, and this has been the teepee leaves have been in there for about a week. Oh no, actually since Friday, so 5 days, and they're already really starting to decompose well. They're like digesting anaerobically, and so we'll give it some more food. Yeah, so just literally mash it in there. It's making a potion. And let's talk about the history of this method and where it comes from. So, way back in the day in Korea, this is one of the ways in which they would transform organic waste into fertilizer. Literally just allow it to digest in containers. And this method has sort of been like revived and revamped by an agronomist and agricultural scientist named Young Sang Cho, who is from Korea, and it's part of his system called Jadam organic farming. And Jadam is an acronym in Korean that means people who are like nature. And so it's a subset of natural farming, which has its origins, at least the type that people use nowadays, and that's getting popular nowadays, has its origins in Korea, China, and Japan. But a lot of these techniques can be found in many places across the world. And what really this is ancient indigenous farming practices, and we're bringing them back to grow food more sustainably than ever, more sustainably than we ever have here, at least. So we'll just mash it in there, and I'll show you guys the book after we're done here. Get it nice and crushed up. Allow those microorganisms to start breaking it down. And I can smell it's at a certain stage in decomposition or in digestion, because it develops like a really pungent odor that smells kind of like sour olives.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Especially with the woodier material, it'll get that odor. But eventually it'll sort of like mature and start to, once again, to smell like a barn or a petting zoo, and it'll even have like kind of like a sweet odor to it, and that's the smell that you want. So let's talk about smells you don't want. Sulfur, vomit, feces, ammonia. If you have any of those smells, toss in another handful of leaf mold, sort of like lightly incorporate it, and wait about 2 weeks, then you can use it again. So yeah, when can you use this? So now that we're adding a bunch of material, we can use it in about 10 days to 2 weeks. And then what we do is we'll just like strain off the liquid portion. We'll filter it with one of these paint strainers right here, and then we'll load it up into a sprayer and then spray it on the soil. That's it. We actually did that recently, and the plants look happy. Although we still need to get more phosphorus here. We have bone meal, but I want to start using water-soluble calcium phosphate, which is a whole method in and of itself to produce. That's a bit more complicated. But this is very simple. And you can do this also with weeds. So if you have weeds in your garden that you don't want around, I mean, weeds are some of the most beneficial plants around, not going to lie, and this is why, because you can make them into fertilizer. And they make some of the best fertilizer because they're the ones who are addressing the problems and imbalances that are in your soil. Because think of it this way, nature is more intelligent than we ever hope to be as a species, and nature knows what plants will do best in a given situation, given the condition of the soil, the climate, and what's in the seed bank, right? So, and in your garden, that's the weeds. So the weeds are addressing the problems in your soil as they grow. So when you take out the weeds, when you remove them, add them to your bucket. And then your bucket will fix the problems over time. So we get Bermuda grass here, and we use that. Whenever we weed that out of the mulch, we put it in here. So another great thing about this is over time it'll digest, and this is why it's great for weeds and invasive plants too. If there's any part of the plant that can propagate itself, seeds, cuttings, runners, whatever, they'll break down in here. They won't survive. And then you just filter off the liquid, and then you have totally neutralized the propagules of that plant. They cannot spread, and they will no longer have an impact on the ecosystem.
What about plants with pests? Would that be the same outcome?
Same thing. Yeah, pests and diseases will break down in here too for the most part. I've never heard of anything being able to survive this process because it's an extremely intense microbial process that goes on in here. Okay. It's like hot composting basically, same deal. Except, instead of using oxygen-loving aerobic organisms, we're using anaerobic organisms. And you do have to be careful with anaerobic organisms because, a lot of the pathogens, the diseases are anaerobic. So you just want to make sure, check the smell if you're not sure. If it smells nasty, like the kind of nasty you don't want, the smells I listed earlier, so ammonia, vomit, feces, acetone, alcohol, sulfur, and don't use it. Or consult an expert at this. I'm definitely not an expert. But the smell of this bucket was approved by an expert recently, so. So yeah, we're just going to keep on stuffing it in. And the smell does go away too if you get it on your clothes. It's not going to stay. It's not like fish emulsion. It won't stick around forever.
Kind of evaporates in the air.
Yeah. And when you apply it to your garden, it'll smell a little bit after too. And what the folks I've been following in Korea are saying is that the smell will actually help to deter rodents and mammalian pests. So since we have a possum problem here, I think we're going to start using this regularly, maybe once a week.
So how often should it be applied?
You could apply it up to once a week.
Yeah.
And if you need to apply it more frequently, have multiple buckets going. We eventually want to get a food waste one going. And I might bring my fish bucket here, one of my fish buckets here, depending on how it smells, because I have two. But if it smells too bad, I'm leaving it at my house. But my fish buckets are ready. I've been breaking those down since February. And like this really like tender leafy material will just like evaporate straight away. It'll be gone in like days.
Really?
Yeah, these microbes in here are super aggressive, and then it's because they're indigenous microorganisms, they're the best microorganisms you can use. So don't buy bugs in a jug from a store for this. Use leaf mold. If you don't have leaf mold on hand, you can go to you can find a grove of really nice, old, beautiful trees, especially native trees, and very politely ask them for a little bit of their topsoil and brush aside the leaf litter. And you want to look for trees with thick leaf litter around them too. So brush aside the leaf litter and collect a very small amount of the dark brown, black topsoil from underneath the leaf litter. And that is your naturally occurring leaf mold. And then make sure to thank the trees after. And you can use that. See again, but also start your own leaf mold. I just collect autumn leaves from around the area, and whatever I can find. Make sure that they're not coming from a site that is likely contaminated heavily. But if there's a little bit of contamination, it's probably fine since we're using very small amounts of leaf mold in each batch. The dose makes the poison. Use your own judgment. I'm not recommending you use any contaminated material, and my statements should not be construed as such. Exercise caution, because everything around us is toxic. So.
That's a good point.
How much can we pack in here? It's becoming a game of that.
Okay. All right.
I think we're reaching the limit.
All right.
So yeah, well, this will be ready to use in about 2 weeks then. I'll probably do another JMS. Do it 5. Maybe. We don't need to keep doing JMSs really. The soil here is in such good shape now, it's like becoming unnecessary for most of the beds. Alrighty. I don't think we can do much more, can we? I mean,
Yeah, I think we.
good thing these boots are waterproof.
Yeah.
See, I'm crazy, I don't mind. Natural farming, folks. Yeah, we can fit more.
Okay.
I think we can fit all of it. And that just goes to show, like, this is how easy it is to garden for free. You don't need to go out there and buy these products that contain all the same minerals that your plants need, and probably in many cases an inferior nutrient profile. They're just more concentrated. This is not a very concentrated product. Start applying it at about a rate of 1 to 100 when you apply it. So, for example, let's use metric here because metric is easier. Use 10 milliliters per liter. Start with that, and then slowly work it up to 1 part per 30, depending on the response you get in your plants. Oh, we made it.
Oh yeah.
So we use 1 part per 30 here, and it works fine. I gotta say, like, you know, yeah, the plant's kind of perked up after we used it, especially the zucchinis. And the moringas look amazing too. The stuff that's not thriving right now is mainly the stuff that doesn't like the weather right now.
I just noticed the apples.
Oh yeah, we have apples this year, finally.
I know, I see the little cluster right here.
Apples are awesome. It's so great to have an apple tree in your yard. But make sure you pick a low chill variety. This one's not low chill, so I don't think we can be guaranteed good yields going into the future.
I think we're only gonna probably get that cluster, it looks like it.
Yeah, and that's the color you want. You see that sort of like greenish brown material? Greenish brown color? It'll be either like that or a little bit greener still. Color is important, and smell is important. Alright? Alright. We packed it in pretty good. Let's get some leaf mold. And we don't need to add leaf mold at this point, but I'm just going to demonstrate how you do it to show you how easy it is. So we just need a small handful. And see, we're producing a ton of it. And this has been inoculated with native biology originally. So we have lots of indigenous microorganisms in here. It smells really, really good. And so yeah, this is where our microbes come from. So we're just gonna sprinkle it, maybe incorporate it lightly. And leaf mold is pixie dust. It's sort of like the material that holds the vitality of the soil food web, and a diverse community of indigenous microorganisms that is microorganisms that have evolved in our climate, right? And evolved in the exact situation that we were living in. So I'm gonna run the old gross water out of the hose. We can use it to water the fruit tree. And we're gonna give the pigeon peas a big cut in the fall. Bigger.
They go very nice.
Oh, nice. There's a funnel web spider right there on the mulch. Give it a nice topping up. You don't need to use like one of these sealing gamma lock lids, actually. It doesn't have to be totally sealed. The reason why we do that is to minimize odors.
Yeah.
You can smell it sometimes, but you'll just get a whiff of it, and it smells like, you know, petting zoo. Alright, then we seal it. flies like it.
Oh yeah.
Flies are, the role of flies, of this kind of fly, is to facilitate processes of decomposition and decay. They are important. We just want to make sure they don't get out of control. All right. So yeah, we did apply it already. I'm not going to demonstrate that because it's not ready, but I can show you what we use. So you can use a watering can. If you're using a 2-gallon watering can, you'll want about 8 ounces, I think. That's for 1 to 30. So here's our applicator. So this is a type of hose end spray applicator that uses a, to use fancy scientific terminology, a venturi to inject the solution in here into a stream of water, right? And so all it is basically uses this little mechanism in here to like create suction whenever there's water flow. So you hook this up to your hose. You'll fill this up with your product. So for our 1 to 30 rate, it's about 1 to 32 because this is a 1 to 16 applicator. So we'll fill it up halfway with the fertilizer and then the rest of the way with water. And then we just hook this up to a hose. We turn it on and then it injects the fertilizer and sprays it directly onto the soil. So as a soil drench, right? So that's how we apply it. It's oftentimes recommended to apply it with another product that you can make. So I want to talk about the book now. I'm going to get the book. So you guys are probably wondering, you know, where I got this information. How did I learn this? You know, where does this come from? This book. So, let's read this. Jadam's ultimate goal is to bring farming initiative back to farmers. Through Jadam's method, farming can become ultra-low cost, completely organic, and farmers can become the masters of farming. Farmers will possess the knowledge, method, and technology of farming. When organic farming becomes easy, effective, and inexpensive, it can finally become a practical alternative. Farmers, consumers, and Mother Nature will all rejoice in this splendid new world we wish to open. And so this is all pretty much based on traditional Korean farming techniques, but sort of like revamped with a modern scientific understanding. But these are all... Okay, we're back. Sorry about the interruption. So yeah, I was talking about the book, Jadam Organic Farming. So this is sort of like a revamping of ancient Korean farming practices. And many of these practices are also, you know, not specific to the region, but variants of them can be found all around the world. The whole point of this is to... this is supposed to be a book outlining disruptive technologies that will replace the destructive industrial petrochemical agriculture that is dominant in the world today. So we'll displace chemical fertilizers and pesticides using homemade products that cost nothing. So this book is awesome. So there's another, it sort of talks about the principles a bit. And the importance of microorganisms. There is a recipe for a microorganism solution in here that you can use, and you typically will apply the microorganism solution with the fertilizer, but you don't have to. The microorganism solution is a bit more complicated, and it has this really, really awesome section on the JLF, which is what that was, Jadam liquid fertilizer, talking all about how to make it, right? So all the different materials you can use, right? What it looks like, what the nutrient values are. See, wild herbs Jadam liquid fertilizer. This is basically any plant material. This is what basically describes invasive plants, right? And you can see it has all the nutrient values right there. It is a very weak fertilizer, but that just means you have to adjust the dosage. See, Purslane, for example, that's a very common quote-unquote weed around here, Purslane. You can make ones that are customized to your crop by using waste materials produced by that crop. So if you want to produce a JLF for tomatoes, you use rotten tomatoes as your input. If you want to make one for strawberries, you use rotten strawberries, or strawberries that cannot go to market, or you know, like reclaim strawberries. Talk to your local supermarket or food bank for all their like waste materials. Use that. Food waste as well. All the nutrient values are there, and this is based on their research. They have like an institute in Korea where they trial and test these products. And yep, there you go. Human excreta. That has nutrient values to it too, right? That's one of the stronger ones actually. Urine, feces, right? Natural nitrogen, fish meal, mackerel. So that's using fish, right? I use tilapia for mine. You could use any fish. Anchovy, for example. Pressed cake, which is like an agricultural product that's common in Korea. Fish byproduct. So if you ever are cooking fish, if you get whole fish and you remove the head, use that. And there we go, natural calcium phosphate. We're probably gonna do this one here with animal bones. 1 part bone powder and 10 parts water, handful of leaf mold. There you go. We're probably gonna start one of those, and we'll cover that in the live stream. Natural calcium, eggshells. Another great way to utilize your eggshells, right? Natural potassium. This one uses some like mineral inputs and plants. You can add this to your existing JLF too. We might just add bone meal to that, honestly. Natural mineral. This uses rock dust, I believe, and humus. So humus, soil, and rock dust. And yeah, you can even make color enhancers using seaweed. I want to make a seaweed one too, actually. Seaweed is awesome. But yeah, so, and it talks about how to use it, how to apply it. All these great things. You can get this book on Amazon. So yeah, free DIY homemade liquid fertilizer. Yeah, you don't need to buy products to garden. You don't need to spend $100 to grow one tomato. That's the people who make that joke spend $100 to grow one tomato. So yeah. Any questions? Real quick, we can drop them. You can drop them in the chat. We'll probably stay on for another minute, and then we're going to close it off. And remember, if you want to ask us questions, use the Ask a Master Gardener feature on our website. The link is. Let me see that. Show you guys where the link is. We have a welcome sign now, so you can come visit us if you're on campus. We're going to show the welcome sign so you can see when you can come by. Welcome sign. Here's our open hours, and the link is down there for Ask a Master Gardeners. So yeah, if you want to come by, take a screenshot. I am here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sean, one of our student assistants, is here Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great one, and I forget what we're talking about next week. It's on there. It's on the Instagram. I don't remember these things offhand. I've experienced information overload constantly. See you all later. Have a fantastic Wednesday, and we'll be back in a week. Catch us then.